with partners all, thanks, Gemma, all around the globe. We work with alumni networks, we work with more complex network of networks, leadership networks, etc. And of course, we also have a lot of friends and partners and collaborators with us on this journey. There are some names you can hear. We have a lot of other events happening this month, with which my colleague will share a bit later about, but feel free to check out all of our sort of other people who also joined us on this journey. You can see some names here. So specifically, why did Enact happen? Why are we here today? It's a bit bigger than just the desire to talk about networks. You know, so we all know networks, we all are part of networks, and we all benefit from networks. But I think thinking about how networks can be leveraged and used for transformation, for transformative change, I think some of these things are a little less understood and explored. And so we really wanted to, you know, think about how can we tackle the more complex challenges that face us today in the world, and how we know that no one single entity can take that over and sort of, you know, handle that. So how can we think about innovation and scaling change and collaboration? We do this at InHive, you know, through our own network, which is called Nexus, which is a network of networks that InHive essentially runs and drives, but is actually made up of lots of members, which includes small and big networks. But when we were thinking about how to really amplify and really further the discourse of around networks, we thought about this this month, you know, where we sort of then thought to put this on. So this is a month where we have a series of online events. This is basically for anyone who's even remotely interested in networks, but also specifically network leaders, coordinators, funders, community builders, activists. Really, it's just anyone who's interested and wants to learn more. We have a lot of events that spans across 130 countries. We've invited around 120 speakers. You know, there's something for everyone. We have storytelling, we have dialogues, we have pitch practice, we have mini technique workshops, and this is one of those here today. And we also have live problem solving. And then we also cover lots of different themes and topics and areas. You can check those out on our website later. And of course, today we have a wonderful panel. You know, we have Jannik, Bonnie, and Lucia joining us today, and I'll be handing over to them very soon. So you'll be able to hear from them directly. Just one thing before I hand off is that we really, really hope that you take something away today and learn something new, but we also hope that the impact that you're able to create, you know, after this session is far-reaching, and that this sort of seeps into changing mindsets and behaviors, and that this is just the start of a conversation. And we'll also be following up in June with some of, you know, we'll also be sort of following up with our participants to sort of take this conversation further. Thank you. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. Cool. Jannik, over to you. If you can just take us off. Thanks.
Yeah, sure. Very excited to be here and to see the interest in the topic. So I'm Jannik from Unity Effect. Personally, I'm quite passionate about measuring impact, especially network contexts. But I know that there might be different associations as well around this. And I think one of the challenges is that with networks, it's really difficult sometimes to really track the impact because it happens at the periphery. So the thing, or what I will present is how to use stories, impact stories, and more specifically, I will present a method for how to track, analyze, and visualize stories of impact within networks. And the aim is to inspire you to use stories not only as anecdotal information, but really strategically to both understand and measure the impact of your network. And we will do it live. So we will do a live demo. I'll give this over to Lucia.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Jannik. It's really exciting to be here. I'm with Bonnie as well. We work at the Social Investment Consultancy. So we are a consultancy specialized in impact evaluation. So also really passionate about measuring impact and really trying to understand the change that is happening with different types of initiatives, and specifically with networks now. We have been involved in the learning journey and evaluation of a network of networks as well. So it's really something that excites us. And what we want to offer today is a technique to map systems, because networks are really complex. And so this is something that a trial that we want to do with you. I mean, something that we have done before, but we want to try with you today to go through your experience and just piece by piece understand the kind of influence that you want to have in systems, and to understand a little bit better what are the systems that you want to influence in your work. So that is also the practical exercise that we'll do today together.
Thanks, Jannik. Thanks, Lucia. Perfect. So just to introduce the structure of the session, you will be receiving an invitation to join breakout rooms. Jannik will be in one, and Lucia and Bonnie will be in the other room, and they'll be presenting the techniques that they both mentioned. Feel free to choose any room, but of course, once you choose one room, please do stay there. We'll spend about 20-25 minutes in that room, and you'll have a chance to learn directly from either Lucia and Bonnie or Jannik. Gemma, if you could just open the breakout rooms, that would be great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so the idea for this exercise really is that we would go through, first of all, understanding what are the systems that you want to influence. And maybe what we can do is just having a chat. You can either put it on the chat if you feel like that's what you prefer, or if you're also happy to just share a little bit about what you do, like maybe your organization, and what you think would be the system that you want to influence. And the idea here is just to put some notes. What you can do on here on Jamboard is creating a sticky note. And so, yeah, basically you just type, for example, the social innovation sector in the UK, let's say. That is something that we at TSIC would we aim to influence through our work, through different ways, and so through the different involvements that we have. So this is just the first step to understand, basically, in simple words, what is the system that you want to influence, and that can also give us an idea of who we have in the room, and maybe create some synergies there. But yeah, is there anything that anyone who would like to share a little bit about their work and how they think, how do you define the system that you want to influence? See that we have a humanitarian system to make it more efficient and more qualitative and more collaborative. So
are we
that's
on
great.
different boards?
Yeah, sorry?
Are we on different boards? My board looks different.
Oh, I think it's just...
I think if you go to the second page at the top, you can toggle through the different slides.
Ah, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so we have quite a bit of global systems here, UN migration network, and humanitarian system. So some similarities there. Children human rights system. So that is quite broad as well. Local education systems. Would you mind saying maybe in which country you are? I see we have somebody from Tunisia as well, biosecurity sector. Lifelong learning spaces. Okay, so online and offline. It's always also good to think about the scale of the system, because a system could be, from the very local family level to the, like in some cases here, to the global level, and, considering a lot of different regions and countries. So when trying to think about the system, it's also very good to think about the scale of the system that you are considering, because that will have an impact as well when you're thinking about when you're mapping the different actors and the different relationships or rules that are influencing that system. Working with entrepreneurial ecosystems. Okay, so I see that we have a very diverse group of people, a lot about education as well and lifelong learning. So yeah, I think there could be some interesting things coming up in terms of themes here. Effectiveness of skill building in youth employment. So yeah, quite a few of you are in the sector. Maybe some good room for ideas. Okay, wonderful. So is there anything, does anyone have a question? Maybe sometimes also the challenge is to truly understand the system that you work with, that you're trying to influence. It would be interesting if anyone struggled a little bit to define their system, or if you were hesitating, you know, on how to pinpoint it exactly. Does anybody have had a moment like that, or maybe you already have it very clear and it's not difficult at all to define? Okay, so you're still working. Okay, so maybe we can move to the next part. And what we want to suggest is going through the 5 different R's. And this is also something that is important to go through. What we found is that basically when working in this mapping, you don't necessarily need to address all the R's, but it's important to have a good vision of the existing work that you're doing and also the potential work that you could be doing. So those 5 R's help you to dissect a little bit the work that you're doing. And so what we're offering today is really to try to think about all those 5 and think if this is something that you're already doing, or if, for example, if we're thinking about roles and about the different actors that are in the ecosystem, are you considering sometimes when going through this, all the actors that you could be influencing, or are there any others that you might potentially reach or influence? So that is also something that is quite helpful to really make sure that there aren't any gaps or potentials in the work that you're doing. So if we are actually, if you go through the different slides in this Jamboard, you can see that there are some questions that you could ask yourself when trying to understand the different R's. So for instance, if we think about the resources, it could be helpful to think about what are the resources that are present in the system, because maybe there are some that exist already and that you want to influence, but maybe there are some resources that are missing and that you would like to bring to the system. It's also helpful to think about who controls those resources and, you know, how you as an organization are contributing to those resources flows. So maybe if we can start with the resources and just think about these questions, what would be the answer for your specific organization? Do you want to influence those resources, or have you identified that there are missing resources that you would like to bring to the system? So we can do a similar exercise like that. And yeah, feel free to share, to unmute yourself and also share a little bit about your work, or if you have any questions about, you know, how to actually identify this, we're very happy to have that as a discussion. It would be also interesting because there are some commonalities in the kind of systems that you want to influence. So maybe there's some room for inspiration there.
I think if I can just jump in, so systems mapping is a tool for you to, of course, map the system that you want to influence, but to use it to measure impact for networks, you have to be really clear what's the baseline situation and what change you want to create. So if you look across the different slides on the Jamboard, we have listed the different questions under each of the R's. So those hopefully will be guiding questions for you to then define your impact. So let's take the example of, let's say, the entrepreneurship ecosystem that you're trying to influence. You might, perhaps you're an accelerator, and you might want to bring in additional financial resources to support entrepreneurs. So the system mapping will consist of 2 parts. One is for you to identify actually what are the existing financial resources that are present to support the entrepreneurs, and maybe your identification is that the resources are not enough, and then your intervention and the intended change that you want to create is to increase the financial resources for those entrepreneurs. So then the increasing financial resources part for entrepreneurs, that will form your theory of change. So we just encourage, we're just offering this 5 hours framework adapted to impact evaluation context for you to think through. So yeah, open to anyone if you want to just work through the Jamboard, or if any one of you wants to speak about your particular example.
All right. I think I just want to seek clarity as to how we are to get the activities done on the Jamboard, right? So under resources, are we just going to, create the boards, right, and paste under resources and rules? How do you want us to actually get to respond to those questions you asked,
Yes.
on the third slide?
Yeah, so I think if you can just put how you are influencing under each of the R's. So, if let's say the example I just gave, then I would put increased financial resources for entrepreneurs under there, under resources. But then other people might have different interventions. Maybe you are working to change the policy around let's say financial literacy or financial education in your country. So that might be more around rules. So we're just trying to hopefully help you brainstorm on that systems level what you're influencing.
That works. I understand now. Thank you.
Yeah, that is a very good example, the one that was just added about facilitating collaboration between businesses and nonprofits. It's also good to think about like Bunny mentioned, if you think about the baseline, what is the state of those relationships between the businesses and nonprofits? Are the relationships weak, and maybe we need to strengthen them, or maybe they're not very formal and we want to create some structure for those collaborations and something that might foster it a little bit more. So when thinking about relationships, it's also very important to think about what is already there, and the kind of relationships, the nature of the relationships. It could also be very well that relationships exist, but they're not very positive. So for instance, let's say that there might be some negative power dynamics there that are very extractive, and then we want to actually change those relationships and make them more positive and maybe empowering a specific group. So that is also something important to think about when you're thinking of the relationships within your system. Create relationships between people previously unconnected. Would you be interested in sharing a little bit about who those people are, maybe in a specific sector? I don't know, something like that.
Yes, people in the biosecurity sector that are not connected now. So different institutions from several resorts, several sectors, such as the health and the security sector.
Right. Yeah, that is very helpful to understand as well, to map, right, the different sectors that you're trying to connect, and yeah, to understand a little bit. In what is really helpful about these exercises, to understand in more detail who you want to influence and how. So if you already identify those two and that they're not very well connected, then you can think how you want to really influence them and make a difference. So yeah, that's a very helpful example. Thank you.
And I've just put in a few notes based on what I saw on slide 2. Some of when you describe the system you're trying to influence, I've just picked up some of the things that, for example, promoting sustainable production and consumption and ensuring environmental thinking comes first. I put that under rules. So what is important to highlight about rules is that it's not just some of the formal rules like policies, but it's also about norms. So informal rules that govern or that are prioritized in a particular sector. So I put those as well. But hopefully this is just a quick exercise for you to get familiar with these ideas around systems change. And we will share the link, of course, to our presentation and the Jamboard so that you can still use it, bring it back to your team and hopefully support you to map the systems and create the theory of change on the systems level for your organization and network.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. I think the room will close soon, but yeah, we will definitely share this, like Bonnie mentioned, and hopefully this is just like a very first step to really understand where you're starting from or where you're conducting your work, and if you want to define your theory of change or measure then your impact against it, then you have a little bit more clarity about
But if you were, my sympathies. Anyway, I hope the breakout rooms were helpful, and I popped in and it was very interesting for me to hear what was going on. We now have around 9 minutes, and we're just going to keep this space a bit open. I'll invite Jannik, Bonnie, and Lucia to just share maybe some highlights and overview. I know it's a very massive task. And then also, please feel free to share any remaining questions or comments or concerns in chat. And Jannik, Lucia, and Bonnie can also sort of address those as they sort of share their closing statements. Can I this time hand over to Lucia or Bonnie to take us through the last bit?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so we had a very diverse group in our room, which is very interesting because what we were trying to do in that session is really, first of all, starting to understanding the systems that each organization or each network is trying to evaluate, because that is something very important to do before starting any kind of measurement, is just trying to understand what is the system that you want to influence. So that was our first question. And we had a very diverse group with people focusing on entrepreneurship, the biosecurity sector, lifelong learning, so very diverse. But the idea here was just to start this. What we tried to convey is that it's the starting point, just trying to understand the change that you want to bring, and then you can measure it, like with doing things maybe with. It's very complementary probably with what Jannik was doing, trying to understand the change that you're doing. But before that, it's very good to map that out. And we talked about 5 R's, the resources, rules, roles, and relationships and results, that are the different pieces that you can do when trying to dissect that system that you want to influence. And we saw that it's quite challenging to do that, but we had a good conversation with some of the participants, and hopefully we can give them some leads for understanding their work a little bit better. I don't know if Bonnie, if you would like to add something.
No, all good.
Go ahead, Jannik. I'm also seeing a lot of requests for resources or any other helpful links that you guys may have. So yeah, just that's a chat. Yes, Jannik, over to you.
Yeah, also just sharing in the chat. So what we did was, working with stories, as mentioned earlier on. So we had the chance to share a story of impact that we experienced, and afterwards we created a visualization and had a look at it. And basically then had a discussion of how to make use of this technique. So for example, how to use it for impact measurement, but also understanding shared issues within the network, different for example, also how different teams or how to make use of this technique, basically, of working with stories. I'm wondering, I think I'll leave it there on this level. Maybe somebody from the group would share a highlight or what they took with them.
Yeah, sure. If anyone wants to ask any specific question, we have a few minutes. Otherwise, I can also just maybe, I guess, invite Jannik and Lucia and Bonnie to maybe share, I don't know, a few tips or some extra things to look out for, or any other tips for beginners, or places to look, or sort of, you know, to sort of get more insight and knowledge and information. But maybe a couple of minutes to see if anyone has any questions.
I can start. So I think measuring impact of networks, it can feel such a daunting task. So I think don't aim for perfection. Just try to start somewhere, measure something really small, and then iterate and learn from that. And also the other thing I'll say, it's easy to get trapped by indicators because it's so hard to find what actually can represent measuring some of the really huge impact that you've got. So I would really encourage you to think of very simple indicators, even using some output indicators as proxy indicators for some of the longer term change. And I would also suggest that this is a great place for you to meet peers, and we need more people sharing actual indicators that are used so that we can really learn from each other and not reinvent the wheel.
And well, the one thing that I can add is what I shared in the breakout. I think when working with impact, for me, the question always is like how to make it meaningful. Even the process of measuring impact itself, which can start with trying to, in a participatory way, for example, do a systems mapping, trying to identify what we actually want to measure, what we care about, and then also integrate the measurement itself into activities that you do as a network. We work with stories. Working with stories can also be used as a method itself for facilitation, right? And I think this is something that has proven to be successful, not sending out surveys waiting for responses, but really using impact measurement as a tool to empower the network and the participants in it.
Thanks, Jannik. I'm also seeing some LinkedIn profiles being shared in chat. I think that's wonderful. If anyone wants to sort of connect or specifically want to reach out to anyone, feel free to use the chats to share your contact details or request anyone else's. Any other comments from the audience or questions or anything? We still have 5 minutes to pick Jannik, Bonnie, and Lucia's brains. Thanks, Rana.
Maybe something I would add, it's great to have these two different just starting points with just to talk about impact. And I think it's really great to think about the stories that you want to tell, and having a tool like this where you can just put visually the change that you're bringing from the, what we shared about mapping the system and the different pieces of the change that you want to bring, and then having something visual like what Jannik was sharing, and actually not just thinking about having a whole set of tools from the indicators to maybe more qualitative stories, and using all that to really tell your story about the change that you're bringing. And I feel that it's a good example of, there are so many ways to telling that the story of the work that you're doing, and just encourage you to explore those. And yeah, it's just a matter of sharing the amazing work that you're doing, and probably also very importantly, learning about it so you can continue to do the great work.
Sorry, I don't know if I can jump into this, but the subject of monitoring, evaluation is something that I find, so meaningful, and always something that intrigues and excites me. So I don't know if the speakers can share more resources, especially as it relates to, how to identify with baseline, and also how you can, determine your indicators so that affects input and output, and, all of those ways of actually getting to do the proper monitoring and evaluation of your impact network.
Well, I don't have a resource out of the top of my head, but of course, feel free to reach out. And if somebody else has, please share.
Yeah, we do have, we shared the slide as well. We included a few links to, first of all, some just frameworks to map, some of the things that you need to consider for network impact evaluation, because it's very important. That's why we really wanted to bring this systems change lens, because evaluating impact for networks is particularly, it has its specificities. And then, yeah, there will be a few links there that we can share for you to maybe start thinking about your theory of change, and then moving for indicators, things like that.
Thank you. I love this exchange of resources that's happening. Sorry, Dennis. Jannik, I think there's a question for you specifically. If the story map will stay online for some time, Andrea would like to check it out a bit later.
Yeah, I think there is no personal data. So in that sense, it might be okay, maybe until the end of the Jannik festival, and then we will take it down. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I just want to thank everyone who joined today, but of course, thank you so much, Jannik, Lucia, and Bonnie, for giving us your time and skills and expertise. I just want to remind everyone, as shared in the beginning, and I think Gemma shared it in chat, please do check out our website, website. The whole INAC schedule is there. There are a few other events lined up, and hopefully you'll find something else that you would be interested in attending as well. Yeah, and I guess we just take a quick moment, unmute ourselves at the same time, and then just say bye to each other, and have a great and restful weekend, everyone. So would love to hear some loud goodbyes. If you can just unmute yourself and go for it.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Good to see
Bye,
all of
everyone.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks a lot. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for joining. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Lucia. Thanks, Jannik, so much.
Yeah, thank you.
No, thank you.
Yeah, it was great. Perfect. I'll be in touch via email, of course, with some post things and thank yous, and then we can just exchange. You can just share the recordings later, and I'll in touch.
Sounds good.
Have a great weekend. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.